Hey guys, it's Allie. Welcome back to Infertile AF, the podcast. This is episode 24 called Naomi. So I'm not going to lie, today's story is very sad and it's pretty tough and it's really raw. And Naomi is amazing for sharing all of it with us. And the reason that I wanted to share her story is because I've never, ever heard anybody talk about what she's going to talk about today. Mainly, she talks about the stillbirth of her son named Bear. But when I first reached out to Naomi, who I found on Instagram, I said, if you'd be willing to talk about your story, I think it's really important. And she absolutely agreed because she said when she was going through all of it, she could not find anybody. She searched high and wide all over the internet to connect with somebody who was going through what she was going through, and she just couldn't. So she wanted to do this today to help any of you out there listening who might need to hear this story. Like I said, it is tough, and she's really brave for getting into all of it, and I think it's really important. So I want to thank Naomi for doing it again, and without further ado, this is Naomi's story. Hi, Naomi. How are you?
Hello. Yeah, I'm really good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. So you are in England.
So yeah, I've always been in England. Grew up in Kent, which is still where I am now, just not far from where I grew up with my mum and my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm 24. My eldest son is 5. So I had him when I was just turned 19.
Okay.
And so never really planned to have kids in it. That was kind of something I was thinking of in the future, not really something that I'd planned at the time. But yeah, I had him at 19. So yeah, he's great. He's really, really great.
What was it like having a kid at 19 years old?
It was tough, very, very tough. I still lived with my mum at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we moved in with his parents not long after Tristan was born.
Mm-hmm. With your partner's parents, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We then moved probably about 3 or 4 times since.
Mm-hmm.
So we've moved around a lot, mainly through rental, being expensive and unreliable. So yeah, we've had to move a lot. So taking a child from newborn all the way up to 5 now, moving several times,
Mm-hmm.
it's quite difficult. But it's nice. We're settled now, so that's really lovely.
And what's he like as a little kid?
Lively. He never stops. He's always on the go, never ever stops. He always wants to be playing something.
Uh-huh.
He's not one of those kids that will sit down and watch TV for a period of time or anything like that. We're up. He likes to get up about 6, probably 6 a.m. and he'll be on the go all day. He won't stop for a rest. Has so much energy.
Uh-huh. He's so adorable. I was looking at your Instagram again this morning. He's so cute.
He just has such a personality. And we try and put the radio on in the kitchen and he'll come over, he'll turn the music up and he'll dance around the kitchen and be like, come on, Mum, you've got to come dance with me. So we have a little dance dinner. It's great. We have so much fun. And
yeah.
I just hope that carries on with him forever because he's so sassy.
Yeah.
And he's going to have such a good life ahead of him if he carries on like that.
Oh, I love it. So tell me about your second pregnancy. When was that? And did you have any trouble getting pregnant a second time?
So the second time I got pregnant, we'd planned it and we had said, do everything right, take all the vitamins that you need to take, make sure that I'm doing everything properly. And I was lucky enough to fall pregnant straight away.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much the same month that we'd started trying, which was great.
How old was Tristan at that time?
So Tristan would have been 4 at that point. But my morning sickness was horrendous. I had the worst sickness through my pregnancy, and I just felt awful all the time. And I struggled a lot, pretty much every day. Had one point where I was so sick that I did have to be admitted to hospital for a bit,
Wow.
just to get some, just get some anti-sickness really, which did help. Thankfully.
Had it been like that with your first pregnancy as well, or was this different?
So the first one was quite bad, but this just felt like it was like a whole nother level. Like it was just so much worse. I don't know if that's just because the first had been a while ago and I hadn't really remembered how bad it had been, or whether this one was actually a lot worse. And I felt like my body just was not coping the same way that it had done the first time. But then also getting up with a 4-year-old as well every day, first thing in the morning, I would find if I could sleep in till about 7, I was a little bit better. But if I was
sleep in till 7?
Yeah, that's the sleep in, definitely.
That's the reality of parenting. Sleeping in at 7 a.m.
And just when I was getting up that early, I just knew that it was like I can't function until I'm sick. Like I just can't function. My body is just like, it feels like it's eating me from the inside. It was awful.
God.
The worst. Probably about 12 weeks onwards. And then as well, I work in a supermarket, so I was around food all the time, and just the smells were just awful.
Oh my God, I can't even imagine.
To a point where I had to go out the back, and I'm one of these people, I'm like, I feel like I'm quite strong at work, and I just get on with it, just get on with what I've got to do. And I just broke down. I just absolutely could not cope with it anymore.
So I was like, what did they do to make you feel better? Was there any sort of like medicine you could take, or did you figure anything out on your side? Like,
no, like I couldn't get anything to make me feel any better. Like absolutely nothing would work. I tried all of the, the ginger, all the old wives' tales about things like that, and nothing, absolutely nothing seemed to make a difference. So I just kind of got to that point. I'm just going to have to struggle through it. It'll pass. And it wasn't seeming to pass at all.
Oh God, that's the worst.
Worse. Yeah, never wanted to pass. So, it's definitely one of those things that I won't forget how bad that was.
Okay.
And how awful. And now I feel like I'm really sympathise with people that tell me, they're like, I feel really sick. I know how you feel.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I recommend going to bed and sleeping, because I don't know what to suggest to help you, but I can just sympathise with you.
Yeah. Sometimes that's all it takes, is someone to be like, I hear you. I get it. So was everything okay health-wise though with the baby? Like you'd been going in for scans, heard the heartbeat and all of that. Tell me about those types of experiences.
Yeah. So everything was fine to start with. So we got up to the 12-week scan, and that was absolutely fine. And being low risk from my first pregnancy, just carried on as normal, just going to the usual midwife appointments. Nothing had been picked up then. And then we got to our 20-week scan, which we went along to, and that's when they told us the genders. They told us he was going to be a boy. And at the time they were doing the scan, we were in there for quite a while, and they were just like, oh, he's in a really funny position, he's really, really low down, and we can't see his head properly, and we can't see his heart properly. So they sort of did that thing where you go off for a walk and shift you around a bit, come back in an hour. Went back, no, he's still not moved, so we're just gonna reschedule you for 2 weeks time, just to come back and have a rescan, just to double check.
Did you get nervous at that point?
Yeah, a bit, but you don't really think anything too much of it. And I remember the weirdest thing is that I remember going back to work, and everyone was like, oh, how was it, is it a boy, is it a girl? And I remember being there, and I can remember exactly where I was stood as well, just saying to one of my colleagues, I was like, oh, he's a boy, but we've still got to go back and check. And she was like, oh, everything's fine. I was like, yeah, like let's just get past that next scan. And now that I look back, I think, oh my God, there's so many things like that happened. So we had the scan booked in for the rescan, and it was on a Tuesday. And I remember on the Monday I went shopping, and we hadn't bought anything. We'd planned on using a lot of Tristan's, you know, the old things that we'd kept.
Right.
We were going to use a lot of that again. But I was in the supermarket and I was having a look around, and I saw this really, really cute boy's newborn baby grow, and I picked it up on the shelf, and I sort of was wandering around, probably spent another 10-15 minutes just looking, and I was about to walk up to the checkout, and there was just something telling me not to buy it. And I don't know what it was, but it was like, no, you need to wait until you're shopping together with, you know, friends or family, whatever, just so that you can get someone else's opinion, you know, just don't get it now. And I put it back on the shelf. And then the next day was when we went in for the rescan, and we went in and they were scanning for quite a long time. And then they were like, right, it's fine. You know, the head's all fine. We just still can't quite see the heart properly. And they were really fun. They were really lively. The people doing the scan, it was so nice. And she was like, I'm just going to go and get a second opinion on this. And that's the moment that your heart starts to sink a little bit. But in your head, you're trying to tell yourself that everything's fine. There's nothing wrong. And this other woman comes in, and you can just see this look on her face that's not very enthusiastic at all in comparison to what the other two ladies have been like. This woman was just really like, you know, we need to send you for a detailed scan because we can't see everything properly. And they weren't telling us very much. And because they weren't saying very much, it didn't worry me too much, if that makes sense. You know, if you'd think if there was something really wrong, they'd be like, oh no, something's not right. But she didn't say anything much at all. She was like, we're just going to go and get one of my colleagues to come and have a chat with you. So we sort of were taken to this waiting room, which was away from all of the other people waiting. And it was only a small box room, and it had like 2-3 chairs and a table, some tissues. And then there was this photo, there was like a plaque on the wall. And it was SANS. So this is the charity that have decided to fundraise for.
Right.
And it said SANS, Stillbirth and Neonatal Death Charity. So the furniture in this room has been provided by SANS.
Oh, God.
And me and my partner at the time looked at each other and we were like, that's not good. Why have we been put in a room with that on the wall?
Yeah.
Like, this feels really serious now. And so someone comes into the room and she says, right, what we've got to do is we've got to send you to London today, and you've got to go to the main hospital, the main children's hospital, for a detailed heart scan. And then she just said, I've got to go off and book this for you now. So, you know, how long does it take you to get there? How quickly can you get there?
How far were you from London?
So on the train, about an hour and a half, but in total from getting from where we live to the station, waiting for the train, probably about 2 hours to 2.5 hours. So she went off and made this phone call and came back with an appointment for the same day for about 3.5 hours later. And when they're rushing you through that quick, you know something's really wrong. Yeah. Because you never, you know, even when you go in generally for scans, they're like, oh, it's fine, you know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. There never feels that rush, even though you want it quickly. There's not that time frame on it.
Right. The sense of urgency.
Yeah. And the fact that we had to be there with, you know, the same day even was enough to make you think, oh my God, something's really not right.
I feel like I would have lost it at that point. I would have been so terrified.
And, you know, we held it together. We were like, oh, it's fine. Like in our head, everything was still fine because no one had told us at that point that anything was seriously wrong. Okay. We were like, oh, it's probably just a precaution. You know, and you get that in your head, and you never think that you're going to be told anything is seriously wrong at all. Right. So, I remember at this point, because we were both meant to be going back to work after the scans. Not expecting to have been told to be going off to London. So we went our separate ways for about an hour so that he could go and tell his work that he wasn't coming back. And and I could do the same. And I remember phoning my sister, and I just said to her, I just absolutely broke down in the car, and I was like, I've got to go. Something's really wrong. Like, I've got to go to London. And she was like, just calm down. Until you know what it is, you need to stay calm. And I was like, I can't stay calm. I don't know what to do. That was the point I lost. It was not when I was with him, but when I was telling my sister, because, she's the person that I go to for everything. Emotionally, like, just actually saying it out loud to somebody who wasn't involved in the situation suddenly made it really real. My work were fantastic. I phoned them as well. I said, I can't come back today. I've got to go and have this scan done. And they were great. They were like, just take the time that you need. Obviously, they'd seen the struggle that I'd been through over the past few weeks before that anyway.
Right.
So they were like, it's fine. Don't worry. No rush. So I felt on the work side of things, I didn't have to worry about that at all. Anyway, we met up back at home, and we went to the station, got on the train, and it was weird. When we were together, we were just acting like nothing was happening. Nothing was wrong. Getting a drink from the cafe and sitting on the train, and we got there, and we were told, we were just given these basic instructions, really. So when we were back at the first hospital, we'd been told, right, you need to go to this hospital, and you need to go to the cardiology unit, the fetal cardiology unit. And so we get to the hospital in London, and we're wandering around, we get to the children's bit, but there's not really any signage towards it. Like, don't really know where we're going. And we get to this door that's like, it's just looks like it's not meant to be a unit at all. And it's just got a buzzer on the side. You think, are we in the right place? That doesn't really seem like it. Anyway, so we press this buzzer and go in, and there's no one there. There's just one member of staff on the reception desk, but it's quiet, it's empty. There's like no one else around.
So eerie.
And we've just come out of this corridor, which is heaving with people, to suddenly be in a room where there's no one there. You think, this doesn't feel right. Like, nothing feels right about this at all. So anyway, one of the specialists comes out, and she started to explain what was going to happen. So she said, we're going to take you through into this room. It is dark in there. We're going to be in there for maybe about an hour. I'm not going to speak to you because I have to concentrate on what I'm doing. So don't feel like I'm ignoring you or being rude or anything like that. But I just really have to concentrate because there's a lot to look at, and it's, really detailed. So, don't think I'm being rude or anything like that. So, they were very, very nice people. So we go into this room, and we're sat there in silence for nearly an hour having this scan.
Oh my gosh.
You don't know what you're looking at.
Right.
Like, there's absolutely no way that we can, we don't know anything, because it's not like a normal scan where you see the whole baby. It's just the heart. So we have absolutely no idea what's going on.
Right. And you're probably looking at whoever's doing the scan, trying to read their face. Like, is it good? Is it bad? What's going on? That must have been torturous.
Nothing. Yeah, it was. So there was absolutely nothing from her at all. And then, after maybe about 40 minutes, she goes off and gets someone else who also comes and has a look. And at this point, you're like, I just want to know what's happening. And that it still hadn't really sunk in. So I'm trying to stay positive still in my mind, thinking, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it at all.
Right.
Anyway, so she finishes, and they take us to another room. So another little room.
Oh, man.
With a couple of sofas, and the same thing, a table and a box of tissues. And we're sat in there by ourselves, maybe for 5-10 minutes. And then these two ladies come in, introduce who they are, and they basically said, we have found something that is quite serious. But because it's so complicated, the only way that she could tell us what was going on was by doing us this diagram. And she said to us, she was like, your son has got Tetralogy of Fallot. And
what is it called?
It's called Tetralogy of Fallot.
Okay.
Which is basically, I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of it still now. I still don't understand it fully myself, but it's several things with the heart that are wrong, including like a hole in the heart and the all the ventricles of the heart not being wide enough for the blood flow. And then also there was the one of the arch was going right instead of left. Mm-hmm. So we were like, okay, right, all of these things she's describing, she's drawn us this diagram the best she can, and she starts to label it. So this is at the beginning before we know the full extent of it. And so she starts to draw the heart, and then she draws one thing and she writes the number 1 next to it. Okay, so that's something that's wrong. Okay. And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, this, we can deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
Saying that, they might be able to help with this.
Right. They can do surgery or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like, it will be fine. And then she draws something else and puts a number 2 next to it. I was like, okay, 2 things, maybe not so great, but we can deal with this. Then she does something else and puts the number 3 next to it. I was like, okay, now my mind is completely blown. I don't understand any of this. Like, I've completely lost track of where we're at. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what's going in and what I'm understanding. And
right.
It just, the way, I guess when you don't know the scientific details so much, just nothing makes sense, especially when you're having a sudden crash course on it. But not only that, but it's your child.
Yeah, and you're probably in shock. It's like you can't comprehend something like that.
No, exactly. And it was just going round and round and round. And she tried to explain it 2 or 3 times. I was like, okay. So then she explained that there is chance of survival with this, but there's a lot of surgery that's required. So we don't know the extent of how bad it is really. We know it's a serious issue, but until we can, we would have to take you in for full scans and like really research it with surgeons and whatever before we could work out when this surgery would need to happen. Mm-hmm. And then she went on to say about the arch in the heart being to the right instead of the left, which could also be a sign of chromosome issues as well. Mm-hmm. And that was the point that my partner at the time just broke down. He just absolutely, he was just in floods of tears.
Oh. And
I was just sat there like trying to process this, like it's going to be fine. That shock moment had hit, and mm-hmm. I couldn't cry, I couldn't say anything. I just didn't know quite what to think at all at this point. Mm-hmm. They gave us as much detail as they could in terms of, surgery. And she started out with saying that the first thing would be to do this, if you want to investigate further, we would find out from scans as much as possible, so that we can tell you where you need to be to give birth, where, when the surgery is going to happen. In serious cases, the surgery has to be as soon as they're born, which would mean, I think she said it was, about a 95% success rate of this first surgery, which obviously filled me with, that's amazing. Like,
yeah, that sounds good.
So delicate. And then she started going on about the future. And that was the bit that started to get to me quite a lot. Because there was the potential chromosome problem as well. Mm-hmm. There would be no chance of what they considered to be like a normal adult life if that was the issue, if that was the case. If there was a chromosome problem, then there would be no chance for a normal adult life at all, because our son wouldn't be able to take medication for the heart condition and live by himself. So immediately they offered us the tests to find out if there were any further chromosome issues. So, you know, we accepted that, and, you know, yeah, we'll go ahead with that. We'll put that one in straight away. But it was just, you know, the conversation around what the life is going to be like, and what the quality of life was going to be like. So the issues with the surgery was that even though there was a good success rate of survival, there was still the chance of, you know, brain damage, and, you know, that obviously is your most severe, other than losing the baby during surgery. And then it would go on to, you know, it wouldn't just be the first surgery. Dependent on how severe it is, there's going to be at least one, if not two more, in the first few years of their life. And this is full on open heart surgery.
Right.
And then it would, you know, as they get older, the replacements that they have to put in for the heart, for the valves, for the blood flow, they have to be increased in size as they get older. So there would also be the surgery for that as well.
Right.
So there's loads of things going on all at the same time. I don't really know if I'm explaining it very well, to be honest.
No, you are.
So much going
I do
on.
have a question though. Were they wanting you to try to carry him like full term or as long as you could, and then, or were they going to try to induce and then do the surgery when he was?
No, so they would want you to go as close to full term as you can.
Okay.
Because all the time that they're inside of you, you're supplying the oxygen for them.
Right.
So the longer you can go, the better, because, you know, they need them to be, you know, if they have to perform surgery as soon as they're born, they need to be as healthy as possible.
Right.
So yeah, it would have been carried on through. Up close. It still would have been most likely to be induced.
Right.
But closer to the 40-week mark as possible.
But I can only imagine part of your decision making was like knowing that there's this unhealthy baby that you're caring for the rest of, you know, you're only halfway through at this point, or a little over half, you know, so that would have been horrible as well. There's no good decision here.
No, and there wasn't, but they also, you know, at the time of this, as well as giving us all of this information about, you know, the pregnancy and just after birth and all the surgeries and all of that, you know, they turned around and they said, we're also going to give you the option to terminate, because it is severe. And you know, I think the one thing that sticks with me a lot is that, you know, they said if it wasn't so severe, we wouldn't even offer it to you. So don't feel the guilt in whatever decision you make, because you wouldn't have these options if we didn't feel it was something. If we thought we could fix it for good, we wouldn't offer it to you.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it's phrases that they use that you don't really think of at the time that you're having this conversation. You know, the survival statistics and all of that, you know, that's just survival. That's not the ones that continue on to lead a very healthy life.
Exactly. Were they giving you any sort of recommendation? I mean, did they say, or maybe they're not even really allowed to do that, you know, they just give you the options. They can't say, if I were you, I would have been like, what would you do? You know? Like,
exactly. Yeah.
What should I do? You just want someone to tell you what to do.
Yeah. And half of my questions as well were like, okay, so, you know, what about, you know, how many out of the children that have this, how many of them do pass away? How many of them pass away during surgery? How many of them go on to lead a healthy life? And she's like, I can't tell you, because there isn't an answer. It's so different for every child. And we don't have an answer to that. You know, if I could, she did say, she said, if I could tell you that, you know, 50% led a healthy life, then I would, but I can't.
Right.
And all you want is for someone to tell you that it's going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And they just don't say it. They never say it. And
Yeah.
the statistic for this happening to us in the first place was like 3 in 10,000.
Wow.
Which was insane. So when you've got like a 5 in 100% chance of not having a successful surgery, when you're a 3 in 10,000,
right,
it's so much more like, oh my God, that could actually happen to me.
yeah, you're like, we could be that 5% that it doesn't work out for.
Yeah.
I
So
totally get that. I really do. I'm so
there was
sorry that you had to make that decision.
Yeah. And it's, you know, we spent a long time thinking about our decision. We went away from the hospital that day.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't make a decision there
Mm-hmm.
at all. We took all the information away with us. We went home, and thank God we've got amazing family around that looked after our son for a solid 2 weeks while we went through all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess after that, this is the point where it starts to be like a bit like, I don't even know what was happening at this point. We went home and we didn't really do anything much. Like at this point in the evening, we're like, we haven't eaten really today. We haven't done anything. We're like, let's just get some food and, you know, try and like come to terms with what is actually going on.
Yeah, you have to try to process everything, right? You just got bombarded.
Yeah. And also, like, I was still pregnant and feeling horrendous as it was, and needing to eat and having heartburn and feeling exhausted, and then also having to add that trip to London in as well,
Right.
and the travel, and I just
and you have a 4-year-old and you're working and it's
so it was just the next few days after that was more of a, you know, we didn't even really, for the first day we didn't really sit around and talk about it very much. He had to go and sort out work and hand over everything that he needed for work, so that was fine, you know, get that out of the way, because we had to focus on all of this for, you know, however long it was going to take. So he went off and did that, and then I spent so much time on the internet. I can't even explain how much time I spent looking and researching, because all I wanted was to find some information, and it just did not exist.
Really?
Like I couldn't find anything anywhere.
Information about his, what, you know, what was wrong with the heart, or what were you looking for specifically?
So I started out really just trying to research about what it was. And then I sort of was trying to search more along the lines of people who have been through this experience where they have a child now with this heart condition. So I was kind of looking for, I don't really know what I was looking for, to be honest, but the only things that were really coming up were the ones that their babies had survived. But there was so minimal of them. I could barely find anything, which made it really difficult, because you're like, they're telling me that these people are out there, but
where are they?
They just, it was so hard to find anyone with the same condition. And I understand that it's really rare, which obviously would make it hard in the first place, but you just want some information from someone who's been through it, and to not be able to find that. I spent hours, absolute endless amounts of time, going through website after website after website, trying to find something. And I was never successful with it, ever. Not once did I find anything. So I felt like I didn't really have anyone else's experience to help me to make the decision of which way to go.
Right.
And then, you know, we were thinking of our eldest son starting school, and so he was starting in this. So this was all happening back in the February, and he would have been starting in the September.
Mm-hmm.
And our due date was in June.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, we're thinking, right, so if we had the baby in June, and if he's able to last up until the 3-month recommendation for the major surgery, if we can hold it out that long, then our son's starting school is going to be at the same time. So
right.
one of us is going to be having to stay in London for this, and the other's going to be having to do the first bit of school and supporting him through his transition into school, and then work as well and paying our rent.
Mm-hmm.
We were like, how's that going to work?
Right. Can I ask you too, did it seem like all of this would be covered by insurance? Like the surgeries?
No. So, well, it's all, I mean, we're lucky enough that it's all NHS here.
Mm-hmm.
So we wouldn't have had to pay for the surgeries at all.
Okay.
So that was one cost that I'm just so thankful for the fact that we wouldn't have had to have worried about that.
Mm-hmm.
So the costs that we would have had to have thought about would have been the accommodation in London,
right.
Because I think there is like a small amount of accommodation to do with the hospital, but there's not loads.
Sure.
So we would have had to have considered that.
Yeah.
And the traveling. But other than that, thankfully, the costs, there wasn't too much to be worrying about other than not physically being at work.
Right. So did they give you
money in the first place?
Did they give you a deadline? Like you need to make a decision by X date or?
Yeah. So in terms of making a decision, so the law is that the termination process can't be done after the 24 weeks.
Okay.
So when we spoke to them the first time, we took all of the information back with us. They'd said, for the termination to go through, you need to have the 2 consultants to agree to the termination up to the 24-week mark.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to make a decision before that 24-week mark for us to go ahead with it. And we had one consultant who was saying, so basically with the amnio, to find out if there was a chromosome issue as well, that was going to take 2 weeks for the results to come through.
Oh.
So that would have been after the 24-week mark.
Yep.
So we couldn't use that as, either we're going to find out or we're not, or we just had to solely focus on the heart.
Why does it take 2 weeks? Couldn't they like fast track it for you?
I mean, you would have thought so, but
right?
It was like the 2 weeks was going to be like the quickest they could do it.
Oh my God.
And one of the consultants we met with, he said he would have gone, he would have been happy to support, but in terms of the heart, the fetal cardiology specialists, because for them, they know that they can perform a surgery with a high chance of survival, they wouldn't support it gone past the 24 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to make this decision before that.
Right.
And we went back to London a few days after the first scan, the first scan in London. A few days later, we went back just to have a scan of the rest of his body to make sure there was definitely nothing else wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Just the heart. So we went back and we met with one of the consultants there, and they were fantastic, really. They took us into this separate room again, another separate room. But actually at this point, when you're sat in a room full of people who are going for just their regular checkups, you don't want to be in a room full of people who have got, are talking about their babies and all this exciting stuff. No.
Yeah, they're like holding pictures of their ultrasounds and
and
I get it.
No, get me out of here. So they did. They took us into another room.
The room with the tissues.
Yeah,
when there's tissues on the table, know it's bad.
Like I feel like now, like any time that I'm going to be taken somewhere, I'm like, I'm just going to wait for the tissues because someone's expecting me to need them.
Yep.
So yeah, we went in and we waited for quite a while, met with this consultant who did the full scan, and he was happy with everything else. And at that point I was like, oh my God, like this just makes it even harder.
Yeah.
This just makes it so much worse because we've just sat here again and seen another scan of our baby on the screen, and he's kicking and moving around, and at this point he's big enough to feel all the kicks. And so we sit down with him and a couple of other of the doctors there, and they go through the options again, and by this point myself and my partner at the time had this conversation of, what are we going to do? And he's more leaning towards termination, and I'm still up in the air about all of it.
Yeah.
And for him, like, he just could not cope with any of it.
Yeah.
And when you see someone not being able to cope with it, you just think, how are we going to cope with that in the future? Like,
right.
How is that going to work? If he can't deal with this now, this is not going to be okay.
Yep.
And when we said to the consultant, we think we might go for the termination, he was like, okay, well, I can see that you're not agreed on this yet. So you're going to go away you're going to go away. This was on the Friday. He was like, you're going to go away. We're going to book you in. But if you don't want to come, you don't have to come.
Okay.
If you choose not to, then that's fine. And basically they were saying, you've got the weekend to make your decision.
Right.
And that was it. You've got 2 days to choose what you're going to do.
God.
And no one can tell you what to do at all. And
right.
You could ask for advice from as many people as possible, and still no one knows the answer. You want someone to have an answer. Like, someone needs to look into the future and tell me what's going to happen.
Yes. And I love that. Can I just say, Naomi, I'm so glad that you're being so real about weighing your options and all the different things that came into play, the real life shit that you have to consider. Your son's schooling, your job, how you guys are going to get along as a couple. These are the real things. It's, I hope that no one will judge anybody for having to make this kind of decision. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I love that you're just being honest about all the stuff, the real life stuff that you really have to consider, and the quality of life. So thank you for being open about that stuff. And I totally get it. I totally know where you're coming from.
And I think, the quality of the life thing was this massive issue for me, because, they talked about the likelihood of your son's condition, meaning he can't run around in a playground with other kids, and he can't go and, he can't join in all of those everyday things that kids should be able to do.
Right.
And you're holding that decision. You are making the decision as to whether your child is going to join in with other kids. It's not one of those things that you don't have a choice, and it's just, I guess if it happens, you deal with it. But someone is telling you that you're in charge of making this decision as to, what if my son is one of those children that can't go and play with his friends,
right?
Can't go swimming, can't join in with sport, has to sit out on the sports at school,
right? It's what am I bringing this child?
Yeah.
Why am I bringing this child? Would you be selfish to bring him into the world with a life like that? Or, all you want as a mother is for your kids to be happy and healthy and accepted and part of it, so it's heavy, so heavy.
And you just want to know this is why you want someone to look into the future and tell you what's going to happen, because
right.
No one has the answers of how many kids are able to do that, how many aren't able to do that.
Now I'm fully crying, by the way. It's just, I feel for you.
It was the hardest thing to have to consider, was you know, how am I going to watch my child grow? And also for Tristan, this is his baby brother. He's not just my son. He's
Right.
Tristan's baby brother.
Yeah.
And he will be protective over him. How's that going to affect him
Right.
as he grows up if he's not able to, you know, play with his own brother or,
Absolutely. It's affecting Tristan's quality of life as well. All right. I need a damn tissue.
It's the tissues. Yeah, they have to be there
I don't
all
have
the
any.
time. I guess, yeah, it was just, there's so many things to consider, and you don't think that you're gonna have to think of all these things. But I always felt selfish thinking about the money side of it as well.
Well, that's part of it.
You know,
That's real.
like we both had to work. There's no way we can afford to live without both of us working.
Right.
And so when we were considering the fact that I would have been having to take so much time off work, and what would happen with our son if we had him and he was healthy, what about when I had to go back to work? Who was going to look after him? Was there going to be someone able to look after him?
Right.
What about his medication? And all of that, you know, they were things that we considered. And just so much of it. And when we took this weekend now, I didn't really know what we were gonna tell. You know, we had to tell family, and we didn't really tell very many friends. To be honest, we hadn't even announced as such the pregnancy.
Really? Why?
Yeah, I don't know. And now I start to, like, now that I look back, I think maybe this was the universe telling me that something was going to be wrong.
Oh, the mother's intuition with, like, putting back the baby outfit. That happened for a reason. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we told a couple of my friends, and one of them, like my absolute best friend, was in Australia at the time, like the furthest she could possibly be from me. And I, I called her and I just basically told her what was happening, and she was like how is this even going on? Like, no one could even find the words to even, express how they were feeling about what was going on, let alone give me any advice or anything.
Right.
And for our family as well, like this was their grandson or their nephew. And we're quite close, especially my family. Like, I'm really, really close with my family. And I'm a bit stubborn as well. I was like, I don't want to cry in front of my family.
Right.
Like, I don't want to break that barrier down. But at the same time, I kind of wanted to have the conversation. And I remember phoning my dad, and I said to him, I was like, okay, so, I need to talk to you about something, and it's not great. I'm a planner, and I kind of had this life plan that I was, I had Tristan when I was young, so this one was going to happen when I was young as well, so that, once they grew up a bit, I could have my career and travel and all of those things I wanted to do. And I was like, I feel like with my dad, I can have this like selfish outlook on life and not be judged for it. And I put across all those really selfish things that I felt I was thinking.
Yeah.
Like, what about my life? What about the things I wanted to do?
Yeah.
And the things I didn't do because I had Tristan so young. And am I going to get to do them? And he just was like, I was thinking all of that. I was like, Dad, is that all you've got to say? Give me some more advice. He was like, I haven't got any, but just remember, your life is there as well.
Yeah.
You've given up everything for your first child.
Yeah.
You gave up, all your friends went off to university. You've spent time just working hard to provide for him, and you have to have a life too. And that stuck with me quite a lot. And when you feel that you can't give your selfish opinion to very many people, being able to just talk that through with someone it means quite a lot.
Right.
Because you do forget about yourself a lot. And a lot of people, you know, did automatically throw the Tristan, you know, think about Tristan, but no one had really turned around and said, think about you.
Think about you. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and you do need to do that as well. And I could talk about a lot of it to my sister and,
Right.
you know, and my mum as well. But it's really hard to actually, especially at that point, because you think, oh my God, I'm going to be judged for termination. Like that was the initial feeling straight away.
Yeah.
And
well,
that
my
makes
wish
it really,
is
really
that
hard.
anyone who listens to this and you're getting so detailed about it would never, ever, ever judge you for the decision that you made. That it's just not right.
No, it's so difficult because actually you don't go into a pregnancy thinking, I don't want this child.
Exactly.
Like, that's not what you do.
Exactly.
You know, you want this in your future.
Of course.
You want the best.
Of course.
And you've made this life plan for yourself.
Right.
And
so
it just doesn't go that way.
Can you tell me when you guys ultimately did make the final decision? How did you get to that point?
So I guess we'd kind of said it as in like we think this is for the best.
Mm-hmm.
When we consider everything together, we think that maybe having the termination is going to be our best option in the future. We kind of were going with it, but we never really I wouldn't say we actually sat there and were like, right, we're going to have the determination. Like, we never actually said that. We kind of just had the conversation about, right, we think this is what we were going to do. We're going to go back. And we'd never fully made up our mind. I wouldn't say. There was still that part of me that was like, I want to keep going. Like, I want to fight for this, and I want to keep going as long as I can. And just, you know, pray that everything's going to be fine. And then sometimes I was like, you're living in dream world right now.
Yeah.
You're trying to convince yourself that everything is going to be fine, and you've got to remember that not everything is always fine.
That's true. Yeah.
And you give yourself that outlook that, you know, you only imagine the best case scenario. You imagine what is going to happen if everything's fine, the surgery goes well, and they live a healthy life. That's what you imagine in your head when you go into these things. And
right.
I kept having to remind myself that that's not reality. And there was, so one thing that really got to me was Tristan. You know, we'd told him that a couple of weeks before, you know, that when we'd had the original scan that he was going to have a brother. And at this, he was like really quiet. He's always really struggled with his emotions, and he's always been fine with showing his emotion around me, but not really around anybody else.
Yeah.
And everyone was saying I was mad as well. And like, I think I had gone into like, I don't know if I was like, oh, I'm going mad. I don't know what's wrong with me, but it was like all this stress in my head.
Yeah.
I was like, I need my son to say goodbye. I need Tristan to say goodbye. Like, whilst I know my baby is still alive, I need him to know that his brother's not going to be there. And this is like the hardest bit for me.
Yeah.
Because we agreed that we were going to tell him, even though everyone was like, no, he doesn't need to know. And I was like, no, he might not need to know, but I need him to know. So, and he'd been at his great grandparents during the day, and this was the day before we were going back to London, and we went over, and, you know, this is a 4-year-old, like, they don't understand everything, but when you know your child, like, I know that he's very emotionally intelligent, and he does get a lot, like, especially with me, like, we really have that bond where, like, I just feel like he's invincible, like, with his emotions. Like, I'm just like, he gets me, and he understands when I'm upset, and he understands when I'm, you know, in, you know, the best place. I mean, I was like, you know, went up to him and took him upstairs, and we just said to him, Tristan, you know, your baby brother's very poorly. and we're not going to be having our baby brother as we thought we were going to anymore. And before I went into this, I was like, I'd done my research in how to talk to children about these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I was expecting him, like, he has this sort of thing where he just is like, okay, yeah, whatever. Like, that's like his usual attitude to like serious stuff. He's like, yeah, okay, cool. And he didn't react like that at all. And he screamed. He like absolutely screamed completely. Like, he'd had something in his hand, he threw it. He went and he grabbed the pillow and he screamed into the pillow.
Oh.
And it was the most heartbreaking thing to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, he completely broke down, and then he turned around. He was like, "This is Daddy's fault." And then I felt awful for Daddy as well, because he was like, I don't know what to say to him. And
why did he say that?
I don't know. I think it was just an initial reaction. You know, I was the one delivering this news, but he was there as well. So it was like the two of us facing him with this, this news. And he just really, I think, you know, they just need someone to blame sometimes. And that was the only thing that he could come out with. It was like the only thing that he could think of at the time. And he was just absolutely heartbroken. And it was awful.
Yeah.
But he gave me a hug, and he hugged my tummy as well, and he gave me a kiss, and he kissed the baby, as he says. And actually, like, I think that was the right thing to do, was to tell him.
Yeah.
Because
I think so too.
1 minute I would have been like pregnant, and then I would have come back not pregnant, and he wouldn't have understood that.
Right.
He would have been like, where's the baby gone?
Yeah.
And then it sort of kind of just meant that there was like this opening for a conversation with him if he wanted to talk.
That's great. It's so good that you did that.
He knew then that, like, okay, his baby brother wasn't going to be there. And I think that actually like prepared us for the next step.
Right.
So we went after that. So, you know, that was the point where, like, even though we, you know, still went not having made a full decision, that was the point where I was like, just got to stick with this now. Like, this is the right thing, even though I'm trying to tell myself that you still don't know, and you could change your mind. Like, this is the best thing for our family and for our baby, for his future.
Right.
Is to prevent him from suffering in the future. Like, that's what I was trying to tell myself the whole time. And after that, Tristan stayed with his grandparents that night. And we went back home. And like, I remember, like, every evening that week, I just sat in the living room with the fire on, like, every night, like, hadn't moved, sat in the same spot. And that's all I remember really about being at home for like that whole period of time.
Wow.
And that night went back thinking, like, this is the last night I'm going to sit here with my baby moving, like, knowing that wasn't going to be there the next day.
Yeah.
We just kind of tried to make the most of the time that I had, I guess. And yeah, so the next day we did the journey to London, knowing that we were, you know, going in for this termination. And it was really weird, because we actually, like, so before we went, and this is another thing about, like, when I say that I think I was going a bit mad, I felt like I was going crazy. Like, we went out for dinner with his parents in London before all of this happened. Like went for lunch, which now I look back, I'm like, oh my God, that's so weird. Like, why did I do that? Like,
how did you do that?
Yeah, like, what was going on in my head? Like, I don't even know what I was thinking about, or
probably
anything, but
self-protective thing where you kind of have to at some point keep your life, the normalcy helps you distract from what's really going on.
It was like the only thing that, like, just seemed like the normal thing to do, like be normal is kind of what I was trying to tell myself, I think.
Yeah.
So we did that, and then we went to the hospital, and, you know, same thing. Like by this point, we knew where we were going.
Yeah.
So we go in, and then they take us to our little room again with our tissues.
Mm-hmm.
And then we sat there for a really long time, like probably at least half an hour, maybe 45 minutes, about that.
Mm-hmm.
Just waiting for someone. And we're like, have they forgotten about us? Like, I know that this is like, feels like a really absurd thing to be doing, but, you know, you need, like I said to my partner, I was like, you need to go and find them, because this is taking too long, and I'm doubting myself constantly, and I want to change my mind. And I remember sitting there just in tears the whole time, like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go through with this. Can I change my mind? And he was like, we've made this, we've made it like to here. You've got to remember, like, all the things I've said before about reminding myself about, you know, the reasons I was doing this. But I remember just being there thinking, like, I can't believe this is actually happening to me. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be here. I just want to leave. I want to walk out.
Yep.
And eventually they do come in, and then they have to go through, you know, all the paperwork, and
Oh God.
and then they tell you everything that they have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And this is awful, because they're like, I know that I'm about to have a procedure that's going to stop my baby's heart from beating. Like, I know that.
Mm-hmm.
But you, like, having to sit there through someone describing this procedure to you in detail.
Yeah.
And then they said, they're like, so we can numb the skin for you, but we have to tell you that we can't, we don't know, we can't stop any pain for the baby.
Oh God.
And you're like, oh my god, like, I'm like, yeah, you just go into, like, I don't want to hurt my baby, like, I don't want to, like, I don't want to know that, like. And at this point you start thinking, like, I'd never thought about if they could feel pain,
right?
Like, I'd never thought about that, and now they're throwing something else in that I'm now thinking about, and I don't want to think about this, but it's so true. Like,
yeah,
they can't prevent that, and suddenly you've got another thing to worry about whilst you're in there. And and then they provide the paperwork, and it's got, like, I understand that there has to be a medical term for everything, but they call it feticide, and I hate that so much. Like, it just made me feel like, as if I didn't feel bad enough already, I now feel like a criminal.
Oh my God.
I feel awful. Like, why use that word? Like, someone please change that, because that is horrible. Like, and I don't know if maybe I was picking out the things that were the worst. I don't know, but yeah, so we signed this paperwork, and, you still sat there thinking, I can't believe I'm about to take my baby's life away. But they sort of at the same time explain that, you've now got to sit around after this procedure. You have to wait 2 days before you can give birth to your child.
Oh my God.
So we're about to go in, like, and oh my gosh, it was like he knew, like, that something was about to happen, because he was moving so much, like kicking. Just, it felt like he was doing somersaults. Just, I was like, we're about to go in for this, and the one point that he's moving loads, and I just, this is about to stop, this is about to end, and I'm making that decision. And he carried on like that up until they performed the procedure.
Mm-hmm. Did they do the potassium in the heart? Is that what they did?
Yeah. So, and I mean, that felt like it took forever, and I literally had nightmares about this for months after. I'm probably talking maybe like gone past his first anniversary, so really, like, they kind of stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe probably about 4 months ago ish. So they went on for a good year. And okay, so you don't feel the pain of them doing it to you, but I could feel the pressure when they did it to him. And like I would wake up for, you know, during these nightmares, like constantly feeling this back pain that I felt at the time when it happened. And it took me so long. Like, I think like the nightmares stopped really after I told someone this for the first time. And because everyone knew that something had happened, but no one really knew that it was a termination as such. Like, there weren't many people that I outwardly told that it was a termination because of that guilt.
And then the judging. You don't want people. People don't get it if they don't hear everything that you just said.
No,
and how,
you know, you then also don't want to go into that story. People are like, you don't know who wants, like, people, obviously no one wants to hear it,
right?
But there's people who are willing to listen to it. But you just don't know. Before you speak to someone, you just don't know who is, and you can't be like, oh yeah, I want to talk about this, but yeah, it's so hard to like outwardly say it to somebody. So that procedure has like lived with me, and it will continue to. But it's sort of, the pain of it has eased now. But it took them a really long time to do it as well, and it felt like it was, you know, no one talks about that procedure, and I think all I wanted was for someone else to tell me that they get it. And because I could never, like, finding that research, like when I was looking for it, like if I'd found someone that had said it, it might have made a difference afterwards. But no one was talking about it.
Think
and understandably why no one was talking about it.
But think about this. You're doing this right now, and you are going to help people by getting it out there. And that's why we're doing this.
And that was the one thing I wanted to do, is I thought, you know, no one can prepare you for that. And just knowing that there's someone who will talk about it would make a difference to me. And surely, you know, it's an awful thing to have to go through, and 100%. If it can just help someone, like even if it's just one person,
totally. And you will, and you're going to help hundreds of people or more,
and thousands. I really hope so.
So can you tell me so after the procedure you had to go home, and then 2 days later they induced you?
So the weirdest thing was when we left the hospital, my whole body felt sunk, if that makes sense. So like my stomach, just like my whole tummy felt like my body was already preparing itself, which was really weird and bizarre. And I was like, I don't know if I'm imagining this or if my body is like really getting ready to, like, it just knows that he's gone now. And we went home and sat around for the 2 days and was told, you need to phone your local hospital first thing, like 8 o'clock in the morning. And this was, so by this point we're at the 14th of February, so we're on Valentine's Day, which is so not a cool day to be going through this. And then my best friend's birthday was 2 days after that as well. So we're just like, come on, just want to get this over and done with now. We've been sat around for 2 days knowing that he's still there but not there. And we phoned at 8 o'clock in the morning on the day we were meant to go in, and they were like, we're really, really busy, we haven't got the space for you right now, but we'll ring you, like we'll get back to you as soon as we've got space. And so I was like, okay, fine. And at this point we're 23 weeks plus 6. So we're almost at 24 weeks to the dot. So I don't know what it's like for you guys with the legal side of things, but so when you get to the 24 weeks, that's the legal boundary for registering the birth. So we are one day at this point before legally having to register the birth.
Wait, what does that mean exactly? Sorry.
So when you register the birth, it's like official, like they have the official document that they existed, I guess.
Okay.
Like
and you wanted to do that?
Yeah, because once they're past 24 weeks, that's also, you know, for burials and all of that stuff as well.
Okay.
We were the day before, and I hadn't really thought of it that much because the actual termination had been, you know, the 2 days before. I was like, I don't know if they go by the termination date or if they go by the actual birth date, and I actually didn't know the answer, so I hadn't really expected to be thinking about that at all.
Right. Just adding another complication into this shit storm of all the things you had to think about, right?
Yeah. So we didn't really know which way it was going to go, but the longer it went in the day, the more I was a bit like, okay, that we could roll over into the 24-week mark here, which would mean, you know, we'll have so much more. And the 24-week mark as well is actually being legally entitled to your maternity leave.
Okay. So you're wanting to wait.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I don't know if I understood that fully. Okay. Got it now.
Yeah. So if it went to the next day, I could take my full paid maternity leave. But
gotcha.
If it happened today, then no, like just whatever your work will allow, really.
Yep. Okay.
So it got to about mid-afternoon when we actually went into the hospital. And when we went in, they were like, there's actually someone else. So the amazing thing is that in this hospital that we go to, they have a specific room for stillbirths. Mm-hmm. So it's away from the rest of the maternity ward.
That's good.
And you can spend as much time as you like. But we get there and they said to us that there was somebody already in there, so we couldn't use the room. So we had to go into the main labour ward. And the hospital we're at is all separate rooms. So that's like the one benefit across the whole hospital. So even afterwards, you've got your own space. Mm-hmm. And we were waiting for quite a while, even once we were in there, before they actually did induce me. And we'd been told all the options for pain relief before, and they were like, you can have anything you want. Like whatever you want, you can have it. And I just felt because I've done birthing classes as well, like I really started early with them this time around, because when I had Tristan, I didn't do any, and I really struggled. And I was like, this time I want to do it by myself, and I just want to mentally be as strong as I can be. Mm-hmm. And so I'd started them really early, which was the best decision I could have made, because this time I felt I was going in, even though yes, he was going to be a smaller baby, but you still have to do the labour the same. Yep. And give birth exactly the same as you would normally. And I was like, I don't want any, I just want to do it by myself. Yeah. And that's what I did. And I feel that's created all these memories for me as well. Like I remember everything, and the labour didn't last long. Like once it kicked in, it took a few hours to kick in. Mm-hmm. And when it did, we were looking at the clock, and it was approaching midnight, and so close to that 24 week mark, and like constantly thinking about it. And I remember the labour kicking in just before, like not long before midnight at all. And I did have a little bit of pain relief, but like just enough to like ease it off for a bit longer. And I was like, feel like I'm trying to hold on to this. Like I really am just trying to hold on now. And we went through that midnight mark. And then once the labour really kicked in, it was only, an hour, just less than. And he was born at just before 4:00 in the morning. Uh-huh.
Do you think too, and forgive me if I'm like just inserting my own thoughts, but maybe you didn't want to do the pain relief because he didn't get any when you were going through the termination.
Yeah, massively. Yeah, I think that was all a part of it. I was like, I'm living this experience like in a way that feels so real that I need it to carry on that way.
Yeah.
And I just felt so much emotion that it was kind of my way of connecting with him. I felt
I get that.
like
I do.
that was what it was. But it was just, when we delivered, he was just, seeing your baby just still, and they don't, because obviously their focus is you as the mother, and your health is their main focus. She just took him and wrapped him up and put him on the side for a minute. Like, there's none of that handing them to you that you get when you have a baby, and just knowing that your baby's there but just not moving was awful. And I was, when she did give him to me, we just laid him there between us, just on the bed, and I just didn't want to move. It was like a moment that I felt just I wanted it to carry on forever.
Yeah. Did you hold him?
Yeah, we spent a long time with him. So they offer this cold cot. So basically, it's a bit like, I guess if you're not the one that's in it in that moment, it seems a little bit odd, because it's basically like this box which is chilled, but it's got like a lid that goes over it. So it's a bit like a mini coffin, really, is the only way to describe it. But it's just like really cold, so that your baby can be in there, and you can spend as much time with them really as you want,
to try to preserve, so there's no changes really, physically, right? Okay.
So he was quite, he was obviously very small, so his skin was quite red, but the most bizarre thing is his facial features, like, he just looked like Tristan, like from when Tristan was born. Like, the facial features were there, and he was a quite, like, it's so weird to explain, because he just looked like a normal baby. There was absolutely, physically looking at him, there was nothing wrong at all. And we kept him probably for about a good maybe like 36 hours, maybe, about that. So we spent that night, we had him at the 4 o'clock in the morning. We kept him all the way through the night.
Wow.
And then
that's so great that you got that time.
Yeah, it is. And it's so nice, because this charity that I'm fundraising for, this is where they really kick in for me and for my experience, because the hospital gave us this memory box, and in that memory box, it's got like a blanket, and they have a handprint and footprint kit. So they did his handprints for us and his footprints, and all of this is provided through this charity and into this box. And another charity came along and they took loads of photos for us. So they just were helping us to create as many memories as possible.
That's so wonderful.
And something we'd said, actually, like, so by this point I was in this phase where I was thinking to myself all the time, just go with your gut. Like, whatever your gut tells you is what you need to go with. So if you feel that something is right, then go with it. And we'd talked about other people meeting him, and we'd said, no, we're just going to keep it between us. Like, it's going to be something for us. And when we got to the morning, I was like, I want my sister to be here. We ummed and ahed over it for a little while, because I was more like, yeah, I want someone to be here. He wasn't so sure. And I just said, I was like, you invite who you want to invite, and I'll invite who I want to invite. We won't have them here for long, but it just feels like the right thing to do. because we hadn't really prepared ourselves for that, we just said, like, I don't really know how to ask. Like, do people want to come and see my baby? Like,
right.
you know, when you think of it, like, it's like, do people want to come and see my dead baby is what is going through my head at this point. Is that actually something that people do? Because I don't know, like, no idea. And I was fully preparing myself to have the no, it's fine. Actually, it was the complete opposite. So my sister did come, and my mum came as well, and father-in-law and sister-in-law, they came as well.
Wow.
Not all necessarily at the same time exactly, but they all cope with it in different ways, which I think for me it was that people realizing that this is real. Because until you can talk about it, but then when people actually see your baby,
right,
he existed,
and
he's there, and I felt like I needed that,
right,
to be able to express it with other people. And my sister stayed for the rest of that day that she was there.
That's wonderful.
And my partner didn't want to stay. He just felt like he needed to get out for a bit. So he went off. And it was just me and her. And she held Bear, which is what we named him.
Right. Did you name him while he was still in utero, or was it after he was born?
It was after he was born. So it was a name not that we'd come up with, but it was one that was like passed around in family conversation. And we'd been like, no, that's a silly name. We don't want to use that. And actually, when he was born, he was our little baby bear.
Oh, I love that.
That's what we went with. It just seemed right. It was the right name to go for.
We were emailing a bit before this, and you had said that you and your partner are no longer together. Can you tell me as much, as you want to about that? And, obviously this event played a role in that happening. So can you get into that a little bit? Because I think it's important to show that when you go through something like this, it can kind of tear you apart sometimes, or sometimes people get even stronger, but it's important to show the real life stuff and what happened with you guys.
Yes. So I think a lot of this all comes down to that, the grief and coping with the grief. And I think during this 2 weeks of this madness happening, it was like we were a really close team. Everything seems like, we are strong enough to get through this. We're coping, we're fine, together we'll manage this. But afterwards, once that grief process really started to kick in, I was really, I need to grieve straight away, and I need to, go and see counsellors that are being offered to us and get the support that I need. And he was the complete opposite. So straight away, this barrier was between us, of us always disagreeing on whether one of us was, over the top with the grief or not grieving enough, or he felt that I was just not. He just wanted, I guess from his point of view, he was like, you need to just be yourself, you need to get out there, and that's not how I felt. And I felt that I needed to grieve, and I wasn't ready to just move on as such. And not saying that he was, but I wanted to deal with it. I wanted to go to the counselling. And actually, for me, after I went through all of the counselling that I went through, I felt so much more myself than I had done in a really, really long time, and talked things through that had been on my mind since when I had Tristan, being so young, having him, the stress that had caused. And I felt that I just was opened up to a whole new me, really. And he did the complete opposite, where he shut himself off, and didn't want to speak to anybody. And we spent probably about a year of really struggling with his, well, I guess mental health as such, really. Which is what I had thought of it as, and tried to support him as much as possible, but he just didn't want that support. And then a few months ago I found out that he'd been having an affair the whole time. So
oh my God.
I think, I mean, you're never going to fully know the answers, and I accept that I'm never going to know when it started, but from what I can gather, a lot of it started not long after we lost Bear.
Yeah.
And I think his way of, and I'm not excusing his behavior, because I think what he's done is, completely unacceptable, and his behavior was, the way he was with me was just, by shutting me out through that. And it just got very complicated. But I think that a lot of that comes down to not dealing with the grief properly, and wanting to get into this whole nother life of being around people who want to go out all the time and shut off the rest of the world. I think that's what he was doing. And that was his way of not dealing with his grief. And I will never know whether, he actually was struggling with it or not, or whether it was just because he was having an affair that all of that guilt from that was what was causing so many problems. I will never know.
So what state are you guys in right now?
So we don't speak at all anymore.
But you're raising Tristan he's his dad, obviously.
So he's split. So Tristan's with me. So we do it on sort of a 2-week basis, and he has him where he lives for 5 nights every 2 weeks. Because we've both got careers, we've both got that we need to continue with in our lives. And as much as I would love to say I would love to have Tristan all the time, he's my life,
of course,
he is my rock, and I would love to have him all the time, but I also need to build a career so that I can support him. So I have to tell myself that him's, and I have this serious mum guilt all the time, for working so much. Like I work pretty much full time, and rely on childminders, and then he's with his dad now as well. And I spent so long, the whole time that I've had him, I've made my work around him, so that I can spend as much time as possible with him. And I feel like part of that has been taken away from me with this whole situation, because he's now with his dad for some of that time that I would have had him. So I'm kind of in the process at the moment of rearranging my job a little bit, just so that I can still spend as much time as possible with him. But other than that, we don't speak apart from Tristan. That's the only thing. I've not seen him in probably nearly 3 months now, not physically seen, because he won't even drop him off. He gets his family to do it. So we don't have that contact at all. The last time I spoke to him was Bear's gravestone's only recently been laid, and that was the last time that we sort of spoke, really.
Did he go?
I guess so. I don't really know. I don't know.
What about Tristan? Has he been?
Yeah, Tristan has been, and he kept asking for a really long time, when's Bear's stone going to be there? When's Bear's stone going to be there? Because he talks about it a lot. And like when I say he's been my rock, like he was the one that has been there through everything for me. If I get upset, he will come over and he will give me a hug, and he'll be like, I miss Bear too, mummy.
Oh,
even if I'm not upset about that,
what a sweetie.
He puts like 2 and 2 together. But they say like all this stuff with children not being so open, there's some things that he did which were even though the situation was awful and horrible, trying to explain death to a child is really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had this really beautiful burial, but we'd already tried to explain death as going heaven. And then we were having a burial, so we were putting him in the ground, and he was getting really confused, like, but that's, heaven, what? Really confused. He turned around to us once and he was like, so Mummy, how do they get them to heaven? Do they take them in a van? And it just was the funniest thing that a child could say. Just, I will never forget the way that he just said it. We're at that point where a lot of our friends are having babies, or trying for babies, or, we're at the school and there's lots of new mums there. And he would just turn around and be like, my brother's died.
Oh,
thanks, Tristan. He just gets out there straight away.
Thank God for kids bringing levity to
I know they
situations
do, but
like
I
this.
think that kind of, with me being open about what's happened, there's never really an awkward conversation.
Yeah.
And if there is a point where someone feels awkward, then I don't need to waste my time talking to them.
Absolutely.
About it.
That's
it's
true.
It's not worth it.
I would love to end this on the Bike for Bear note so that we can tell all the listeners to donate and look into this charity and this event that you're doing. So tell me about this, and we will post all the stuff and all the information so people can follow up as well. But tell me what you're doing. What is Bike for Bear?
Bike for Bear is, I am cycling from Vietnam to Cambodia in September.
Okay. How far is that?
It's around 250 miles. And I'm not really a cyclist. I'm really not. And it's something that I'm having to really train a lot for. It's the reason I chose this in particular was because I want to physically and mentally push myself, as bizarre as this sounds, to be back to a point where I feel like I can connect with my son again. That emotion that I felt, I just want to be at a point where, not because I don't really think about it all the time now, but there's a point where sometimes you just want to feel that emotion again. And I want to do something to remember him, and to promote this charity, which is SANS, the Stillbirth and Neonatal Death Charity.
Right. So this is the charity that was in that initial room, right?
Yeah, this is the one. So
it kind of comes full circle.
Back. Yeah, and you don't realize that. I think for me, having this support has just meant that I've been able to, like, as we've just said, from the beginning, something about this charity has been there to support me through everything, whether it be the training of the staff that have dealt with us, the memory boxes, and having that created for us, all the way through to the bereavement support and meeting other bereaved parents. It's been there the whole time, and without that, I think I would not be in the place that I am now. And I feel like I just want to be able to provide something for other parents that have been through or will unfortunately be in the circumstances where they need to use this charity. And it's my way of giving back. I feel that other parents and families have been here and done what they have done to make sure that I have had the experience that I have had. And I just want to keep that going. And
that's so great.
I'm
going to donate. I'm telling you right now. And I want everybody listening to check it out. And if they can, even a little bit, right? $5, $10, whatever, it all adds up. And it's just going to help.
Every little bit makes such a difference. And it would just be amazing. I've set myself a target of £10,000 to raise. And it would just be amazing to get to that point. And to have that big fuck you at the end, really. Just that I can do this, and
Yes.
I'm going to do this. No matter how much people say to me, oh, that's a really big target. Are you sure you're going to do that? No, I will do it. And I feel like in my head, I'm so determined that there's no way that I can't do it.
Yeah.
And I know people, not that people are doubting me. I don't want to say that because it sounds, you're like, oh, are you sure? Like, we don't want you to be disappointed. I like have it in my head that I'm not going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to happen.
No, it's going to happen. We're going to help you. And when is the rides in September, right? So I'll put this
end of
out
September.
Before that for sure. So people have time to donate. And yeah, I like a big fuck you at the end. So let's
end
it on that note.
What we're aiming for.
Hey again, guys. So I just want to say to Naomi, thank you so much. I know that was really difficult for you and you were nervous about it. And I think that you are going to make such a meaningful contribution to this conversation. And Tristan and Bear are so lucky to have you as their mama. So as we mentioned, Naomi is doing this amazing charity ride for SANS. And I would love it if you all would check out the charity site and the info, send a few bucks. Even a few would make a big difference. I'll tell you the website right now, and then I'm going to post it on my social as well. But it is www.justgiving.com/fundraising/bike4bear. So like I said, I'll put that on my social. And I just want to thank you guys for listening. And Naomi, I can't wait for you to kick ass in this bike ride. Thanks again, guys. Talk to you next time.